All right, so we finished updating our ledger, we finished our journal here, and we finished depositing that extra cash that we had, the $2,000 from the sale that we had. So let's go ahead and continue on with June 5th. Okay, what happened here?
The landlord
Mm-hmm.
for your rent.
Mm-hmm.
So you pay 4,000. Oh, you pay for the first 4 months
Mm-hmm.
plus the rent deposit.
Correct.
7,500.
Good, good. Now, in this case, we're only paying 3 months in advance because, of course, if we're paying for 4 months, the assumption is you're paying for this month's rent as well. So you need to also make sure that you have the rent expense because you're going to be utilizing the store as soon as you pay your rent. So in this case, we are having to pay for rent expense and we're going to make a prepaid rent expense, right? And then we're also going to make a deposit because most oftentimes the landlords will often require either 1 month in advanced payment for a deposit or it could be a couple $100 depending on which location you go to. But in this case, it's a typical one. They want at least 1 month's rent as a deposit. They want you to pay in advance. And of course, they want you to pay for the current one as well. So in this case, how much is it going to cost me to have 1 month of rent? 1,500, which we have already disclosed right here. So out of that, that means my prepaid, right? Because I paid for 4 months. So that means 3 months out of that is going to be for 45. And then lastly, my deposit is going to be for the 1,500. And I'm going to be writing a check. All right. I'm going to write my first check for 1,501. All right. So let's go to my chart of accounts and see if we even have those other accounts there. So do I have a rent expense? Yes, of course there is, but I want you to look it up because I need to get the number.
62,000.
62,000. Do I have a prepaid account? $18,600 is my prepaid accounts, right? For me placing in my prepaid rent. All right. What about my deposits? Yes, it's for 18,700, right? And checking, of course, is 10,100. So let's go ahead and journalize our transaction here. Okay. So in this case, okay, so June 5th, what do I know about rent expense? It's an expense, right? It's what we have to do for the business. So are we increasing our rent? Yes, we are. Okay. Rent expense. Okay. What was the account number for that? $62,000. Good. And how much was my rent required for? It's for 1,500. Okay. Next account is my prepaid account. So for 3 months, I'm prepaying in advance. Bless you. So what was my prepaid account number? I think it was 18. 600. Good. And it's for the 3 months, so it's going to be for 4,500. Okay. Lastly, I got to put in my deposit for rent. So my deposits, okay, which should have been 18,700 for the 15, which is 1 month in advance payment for the deposit. And lastly, I wrote a check. Right? And checks come from your bank directly, so checking is going to be checking should be for the total amount of 7,500. Boom. I got it correct. 7,500. Okay? Now, before we go to the ledger, what's the most important thing that we need to do? Any wild guesses? Before we go to the ledger, what is the most important thing that we need to do?
Well, we wrote a check for the $7,500.
Exactly. We need to go to our check register because we need to make sure that the check is written because you just made this transaction here means that you just wrote your first check. So here again, I've already indicated that it was 1501. So the date is going to be June 5th. Okay. What was the amount for? 7,500. And who am I making this check out to? Landlord. What's the landlord's name?
But that's an interior designer consultant, so that's not.
Where are you looking at?
I'm looking at the bottom of that. Is
No. What's the very top? You paid rent to
landlord's property.
landlord's properties. Is going to be who you're writing the check to. Okay. So my payee is going to be landlord's properties. Okay. Good. Now that I've written my check and I've established that it's check number 1501 and I know who my vendor is, now we can go back to our journal and properly disclose that information, right? So this is how you properly actually do the description here is, first off, who was the vendor that you were dealing with? It was Landlord Properties. Okay? All right? And by doing so, obviously you have rent expense, so you don't need to disclose that this is for rent. But what's another thing that you need to do is you need to enter in your check number here. Just so then this is good business practices, right? You have multiple locations describing that you have entered in the check number in multiple locations. So here, check number 1501. Okay. And now is actually where I can go ahead and go to my ledger. Okay, so I'm going to go make sure I'm in the order that is listed. So my first one I'm going to be doing is my rent expense. So here's my ledger account. So I'm going to go to my expenses, okay, my operating expenses, and I'm going to look for my rent expense. OPQR. So after purchases, here's T. There you go, rent expense. Okay, so this is where I can go ahead and write the date in. I can also disclose the piece of information that I wrote a check for check number 1501. And I also can make a note here that my rent expense, right, is for June. Okay, for month of June. Okay. Post reference is going to be my general journal number 1. Did I debit my account? Yes, I did for $1,500. Therefore, my rent expense debit account is going to be for my $1,500. All right. Now, what's my next account that I have to enter in? Prepaid accounts, okay? So I'll give you a hint. It should be the very, very bottom of your Excel sheet. For the word, it's going to be page 17, or actually page 16, since it's not the very last account that you have. So here, prepaid accounts. I'm going to go ahead and write in the date. And with my prepaid account, I'm going to go ahead and write prepaid rent, okay, for 3 months. Because that's exactly how much the prepaid rent is for. It's for 3 months. General journal number 1 for the amount, because this is considered an intangible asset, right? This is invisible money, right? Because you traded it off to receive a contract saying that landlord property owes you this service. And how you are having as another asset is you have the paper contract, right? So for $4,000, for $4,500. And in this case, because this is my first time of me entering this data, that means my debit balance for prepaid accounts is going to be for $4,500. Okay. And then deposits should be the account below it. So this actually probably is on the next page. So 6.5. And I'm going to go ahead and fill in my description or my item as rent deposit. General journal number 1. And it was for the $1,500. Okay. And with that being said, because this is my first entry, therefore my normal balance is now $1,500. Okay. Last thing I'm going to enter in is going to be for my checking account, which should be all the way up at the top because that's the most readily available cash item that you have, as well as it is also the first thing you should have. So this is also on page 1 in your in the Word worksheet. So in this case, in my items, I'm going to write that this is for rent. Okay, and I'm also going to indicate that I wrote the check number for 1501. General journal number 1, 15. Oh, I'm not debiting it. I'm crediting my account for the 7,500. Now, watch this. When I press enter, if I plug in my formula or ahead of time, it automatically recalculates it for me. But if you're doing this by hand, this is also where you can also enter in a wrong calculation. So be sure that when you subtract out this, because you wrote a check out, right? You're getting rid of your money. You wrote a check out for $7,500. Your new balance should be $16,125. Okay? And that's your running balance for this transaction. Okay? Now, we finished the general ledger. Now I'm going to be introducing to you the subsidiary ledger. So if you pop that one out or pull it out, whatever you want to do. Now, what the subsidiary ledger is again, it's a list of all your customers, your vendors, your employees, and basically it's the people that's just involving around your company. So, yes, so it's that list of people. Now, in this case, I'm dealing with a vendor because who's providing me service? The landlord is, okay? So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and find landlord properties amongst my companies or my vendor list that I have here. It should be in alphabetical order. So here you go. Landlord properties is right here. All right. And how I'm going to fill this out, I'm going to walk you through it. So the first one is going to be the date. Okay. Now, the notes here is going to be, well, what did you do? What is this transaction? Why are you involving with this vendor? And in this case, we went to him to pay for rent, right? And to also get 3 months worth of rent. I'm also going to indicate that I actually wrote them a check for $1,501. Okay? Do I have an invoice number? In this case, I do not. I believe so. I do not have an invoice number. But most contracts and most transactions should have some kind of invoice number or some kind of transaction number on there. In this case, it doesn't exist. So it's okay. I can leave that blank. All right. My post reference, again, is going to be where I place this piece of information in my journal. So in this case, I had this transaction on general journal number 1. Okay. Now, terms, of course, because I'm dealing with this kind of vendor, we don't have terms. Every month you're going to pay. So in this case, you can ignore the terms, you can ignore the discount date, and you can ignore the due date. Okay. Now, oftentimes what you can do is, as a friendly reminder, you can say, well, if on your contract it should tell you how much rent is due every month. Is it on the first of the month? Is it on the last day of the previous month? So whatever your contract says, this area right here says due date can be something that you can utilize to help you manage your bills a little easier. But in this case, I'm going to ignore it because we did not have a due date in this one because we are, we're paying these every single month, or we've already paid it for every month. Now, the next one is called prepaid accounts. In this kind of sense, we didn't technically do a prepaid. We didn't pay them in advance to get the service just yet. Okay, even though we did make a prepaid rent expense. But in this case, I'm going to go ahead and ignore that and keep it as 0 because the invoice amount that I wrote my check out for was for the full $7,500. Okay? That's how much my invoice was for, right? Because the person had me pay up in front in advance, made a deposit, as well as included the actual rent expense for that time. So in this case, this is where I'm going to place my receipt that I did with this person, this landlord's property. So in this case, my invoice amount is going to be for the full $7,500. Is there returns and allowances? You can bet not. Discounts? Of course not. You're dealing with your landlord. Most likely not going to happen. Now, the next question is, did you make a payment? And in this case, I did. I wrote a check out for the $1,501. All right? And so that means the amount that I actually owe this vendor is going to be 0. So how this works is you're going to take your invoice amount, right? You're going to subtract any prepaid amounts. You're going to subtract any returns and allowances. You're going to subtract any discounts. And lastly, you're going to subtract any payments. So in this case, I should have 0 as my accounts payable. To this vendor, I owe them nothing. Okay, and it's true. But they owe you in service because you paid them in advance. Now, dealing on our side, we've already done our portion. We paid them, we don't owe them anything, they owe us. So on their books, we don't care what they do on their books. We only care about what we do. And in this case, I've done my journal. I've done posted to the ledger. Now I'm coming to my subsidiary ledger, which is going to be your total accounts payable or accounts receivable. And I've indicated that, yes, on this day, I wrote a check on 1501 for the grand total of $7,500. And I've made a payment. The payment has already been paid. So therefore, I owe nothing to this vendor. Okay? And that's how you properly keep track of your vendors as well, right? So when we dive into owing people on an account, you can actually start figuring out which invoices belong to which one because they will have invoice numbers. And if you meet the discount, you'll know because you'll have a date right there. Okay? So that's dealing with the subsidiary ledger for your very first time. All right? Now, moving forth, we will be encountering this almost every other transaction. Okay? So now we go back to our journal and we go back to our scenario. Any questions in regards to dealing with a subsidiary ledger?
I'm just gonna have to go back and look at all of this again.
Okay. All right. So again, I made a note here that you need to post to the subsidiary ledger. Okay. All right. So then what has happened next? What has happened next in the same day, June 5th? What happened next?
We consulted our interior designer,
Exactly.
and also there's computers that shows on the receipts and things like that.
Okay, so if you notice, every transaction is spaced out. So in this case, let's focus on the one transaction here. We hired Kim Robinson to do interior designing for us. Okay, I have a question for you. Is this necessary to journalize?
No,
No.
not at this time.
No.
There's no transactions or whatever encountered between the two.
Exactly. All we did was hire them. Okay? We just hired Kim Robinson. We don't know what the quote is. We don't know what they're going to bill us for. And we don't even know when the job is going to get done. We just hired her. Okay? So this is insignificant transaction that, okay, we at least it lets us know that we did hire somebody, right? Not like, oh, we got a bill from somebody. No, we know that we hired somebody. So that's the least that you can acknowledge is that you have someone for interior designing. Okay. Now, let's go ahead and look at our transaction below. So we made a purchase at Computers R Us. Okay. So here, we actually went to the store and we received a receipt for the in-store transaction. Okay. Now let's go ahead and look at this transaction carefully. What has happened? What does this receipt tell us?
That you purchase from Computers R Us, and it shows itemized itemized with the corresponding item with the corresponding cost or the price of each.
Okay. Well, what did we purchase?
That we purchased a computer and a printer,
Good.
and that we issued a check of check number 1502, the total amount of 2213.71.
Good. So here we acknowledge that we bought assets, right? We bought an asset. Now, what is a computer and what what kind of asset is a computer and a printer?
You said what type of asset?
Mm-hmm. What type of asset?
Fixed.
It is a fixed asset, yes, because these are considered equipment to us, right? To make our operations continue. So, with that being said, therefore, we need to journalize our assets. So, in this case, we bought a computer and we bought a printer, and we paid with a check of 1502 for the total amount of the 2213.71. Now, I have these two things here. Now, can you tell me, what do I do with the tax? What do I do with the tax?
That's what I was gonna ask.
Right? What do we know about fixed assets? What's included in the cost of the asset?
All the costs that's gonna get, that, all the costs in order to get the asset to the office. I'm saying that correctly.
Yes, that's almost correct. It's to get it readily in service. Okay, but in this case, yes, it is getting it to the store and getting it ready for service. In this case, it's a computer, it's a printer. You just plug it together. Not too much installation or anything like that. So the assumption is, so what do you do with the tax? Is it included in the cost of the asset?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So, how do you guys know how tax works?
Sounds like a trick question.
All I know is
All right.
to put it under the debit too as well.
Okay. So,
So by itself, the total amount of 168, unless
mm-mm-mm-mm.
calculate.
Remember, because we're purchasing a fixed asset, what's the assumption? We learned this in chapter 11. What's the assumption? We're going to depreciate it soon, right? So we need to calculate the total cost it gets to get the asset to the store and get it readily available, ready to put into service. Now, in this case, what do I do with tax? How do
Is it a
you?
payable?
It's not a payable. It's going to be included in the cost of the asset, right? So, cost of the asset could be the selling price, sales tax, shipping, handling, whatever it does to get your asset to the store and get it ready for service. So, in this case, how do we distribute this tax amongst the items that we purchased?
Calculate per amount, 1695 plus 8.25%. So the total cost, for example, for the computer with the tax would be 1834.83
Good. Okay.
or 884, rounded off to the nearest.
Okay. Now you want to make sure that you get to 71 cents. Okay. So, so we already did the calculations here. Now let's go ahead and journalize this and then do the calculations after. Okay. So first things first is the date is going to be June 5th. Now, let's look at our chart of accounts. Do we actually have a computer account?
One 4010.
Good. So computer.
14010 is the computer.
14014 is the computer. What about the printer? 14020 is for the printer. Okay, so 14020 is the printer. And lastly, I'm going to be writing my check out. Okay, Okay, so I need to have my checking account, which is 10,100. Okay, and I know that my total amount needs to equal 21371 because that's the total amount of items. I mean, total amount of check that I've written out. Okay. So let's go ahead and figure out how to distribute the tax here. So we know that the original selling price for each item, okay, so the computer cost me $16.95 and the printer cost me $350. So that's a really nice printer. It's got a scanner, it's got a photocopier, all the good stuff, okay? So with that being said, now let's look at these two computers, at these two items. We need to use the percentage, right? And we're going to spread the cost by proportionalizing it by multiplying it by the tax on each item. So what tax actually does, if you actually really break it down, tax is based on an individual item. So no matter what you're being taxed at, whether it's the whole entire amount, it's also reflective as if you were to just tax it in an individual amount. So in this case, what is my total for the $16.95 with tax?
Okay, now, as I said, I rounded it off, 1834.84.
1834.84.
I rounded off the new.
So let's see. We have to make sure that this actually works out as well. So 1834.84. Okay. Now what you can do too here is you can just go ahead and type in the equation as is. But remember, we need to round our numbers. So I'm going to use equal round for this equation. 1695 times 1.0825, comma, 2 decimal places to get me 1834.84. Okay? And then I'm going to do the same thing here, except it's going to be equal round, right? We're going to do $350 times the 1.0825, comma, 2 decimal places. Oh, I think I forgot to multiply. Okay, so equal round. Okay, the 350 times the 1.0825, comma, 2 decimal places to get me to this number. Now, 8.87. Yes, so you're going to have to actually decide here because now we have a little discrepancy. We're off by 1 penny. Okay, so this is where you're going to have to actually look at it carefully. So one of them is going to be for 87, right? The 8837, where this one for the $387 is actually going to be lower by 1 penny, right? You're going to most likely the less penny is going to come from the lesser amount. So in this case, it needs to be 378.87 to get me to my grand total of 2213.71. Okay, so in this case, we're rounding down when it comes to the smaller valued asset because typically those ones would have a lesser impact on tax. Okay, so here is our totals that we've calculated, and it got to my equal credit of 2213.71. Okay. All right. Now, before anything happens next, what do I need to do first?
Check.
You need to update your check register. That is correct. Okay. So here on June 5th, I wrote a check out for 2213.71. And who did I write this check out to? Computers are us. Okay. Once I update my check register, I can go back to my journal and make sure I fill in that piece of information that I have written out, right? I wrote out a check to Computers R Us. Check number 1502. Okay. Good. Now you may go to the ledger because we finished our journal. We finished posting it. Now we can go ahead and post it to our ledger. And then we need to, because we're dealing with our vendor, we need to go to our subsidiary ledger afterwards. So first things first, I purchased a computer. Okay. Notice checking is right here. But again, you don't ever want to do that yet unless you've done this before, then you may do so. Okay. So I'm going to look up my computer. Okay. Supreme Coffee, that's my inventory item. Okay. So here's my furniture. I already know that okay, so here is my computer. All right. I have two accounts. I have the office equipment account. I have computers account. I have accumulated computers. Make sure that you put it in the proper one, which is account number 14010. So 65. I purchased a computer. You don't need to disclose that because you already know that you purchased the computer. You're placing it in the you're placing it in its proper account. So this is assuming you're acquiring the computer. And we got it for $1834.84. All right, that means my debit balance is if in case I return this computer, that is how much I'm actually going to get back from the vendor. Okay. All right. And then I'm going to scroll a couple down to my printer. So 6.5, General Journal. Number 1, I bought my printer for $378.87, which my total is going to be for $3,887. Okay. For this, it will be page.
Lynn,
Mm-hmm.
is there any way you can enlarge your screen?
On which side?
Are you able to?
On which side?
Oh, it's like both. I can't see any of it. I just see
Oh.
a little square in the middle.
Oh, okay. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna have to format.
The screen.
Yeah, you're going to have to format your Google. Okay, you're going to have to click that, and you're gonna have to change the layout of how you want to see it.
Gotcha.
So go down to the right side of the bottom right where it has those 3 dots. Click that. Click change layout. Select which one that you want to do. If you do spotlight, whoever talks, it's going to switch to their screen. But that's the biggest screen that you could have. All right. Oftentimes, what you would do is you're going to choose sidebar, and that's going to give you a medium-sized window with your classmates' icons on the side. Okay. Let me know. Did it change it?
Yeah,
Okay.
it worked.
Okay, perfect. So your page is going to be on page 12 to find your computer and your printer. Okay, on the Word document. Okay, with that being said, we have one more last thing that we need to enter in, which is going to be our checking account. So scroll all the way up to the very top, or it's on page 1. And I'm going to disclose that I have on the date, which is June 5th. I'm going to write that I wrote a check for number 1502. Do I need to put in any other information in regards to what vendor I had? Not really. It's not necessary because you're going to be journalizing that in your subsidiary ledger regardless. So in this case, I just need to know that, well, what was the thing that I did? Well, I wrote a check out. That's the least you could do in your checking account. Okay. You wrote out a check for the total of 2213.71, which should change by balance to be now 13,911.29 cents. Okay. All of these numbers that I'm entering into my data or into this worksheet is all rounded numbers. That's why for this it should give you an exact number. Versus your journal, when we do other complicated formulas such as equal round, right? We have to force it to be rounded, okay? But in this case, it's already rounded, so my new amount is going to be 13,911. So now that we completed our ledger, we can go ahead and enter the information in my subsidiary ledger. Okay, so we're dealing with our vendors. So we're going to go ahead and scroll around. They should be in alphabetical order. So Computers R Us should be here under your city printers. Okay, so 6-5 notes. Any notes that I want to write here, you could go ahead and write that you wrote the checkout 1502 for computer / printer. Okay. Invoice number. Do I have an invoice number?
Yes.
Yes, you do. It's the sales receipt number. Okay. So in this case, it is 84143. Okay, so this is where we get to also keep track of our source documents as well. And this is where we're indicating, well, this is my proof of transaction. It's the receipt number 18143. Okay, my post reference again is going to be where you place this transaction in your journal, which was general journal number 1. Did they give you terms? Of course not, because you've already paid, you already went to the store and paid it in advance already. So we don't have a discount date and we don't have a due date. Okay? And of course, we didn't pay in advance to have this items there. We went ahead and went to the store and just picked it up. So my full invoice amount, which is going to be your amount that was on your receipt, was for 2213.71. And did we have returns and allowances? This is just in case you do return your computer for any reason. We haven't done that yet. So I'm going to go ahead and leave that alone. Did we get a discount for it? Was the store discounted? No. Okay. So, and did we make a payment? Yes, we did. We made a payment for the full amount of the 2213.71. Okay. So my formula here is you're going to take your invoice amount, you're going to subtract any prepaid, subtract any returns, subtract your discounts, and lastly subtract your payments to get you a grand total of 0, right? And that's exactly what we did. We already paid them. We paid them with a check. So everything that we owe for this person is going to be 0, okay? If we have a returns and allowances, then it will decrease our receipt and we would get money back for it. But in this case, we didn't make any returns or anything because we just purchased it as of June 5th. Okay? All right. So what has happened next?
Same day.
Same date. Yes. What did we pay this time?
Insurance liability.
We paid for insurance. Okay. To who did we pay? Sargent Insurance Company. Now, in reality, when you pay for insurance, can you pay it on a month-to-month basis?
Yes.
Yes, you can, but typically they will sell you either a 6-month packet or a full year insurance. Okay, so here we're going to incur another prepaid account, and we're also going to expense for the month of June. Okay, so let's look at this scenario carefully. So we're paying liability insurance for 12 months, okay, starting on the 5th of June. Okay, for the amount of $2,235 $2,350. Okay, and again, it's going to, and you issued a check and you made it payable to Sergeant Arms. Okay, I mean Sergeant Insurance Company. So, how do I journalize this? Let's actually look at a chart of accounts. What do we know about insurance?
It's an expense.
It's going to be an expense. So let's look up, do we if we have an insurance expense, and do we?
Yes. 6,400.
6,400. And again, we're only expensing it for the month being. So therefore, because we're paying everything in advance, we have a prepaid insurance account. Is that correct? Because we're paying for a whole year, but we're only expensing for the first month. So in this case, we will be encountering a prepaid account because we've already paid in advance for the insurance to cover us on a month-to-month basis. So in this case, we're going to be utilizing prepaid accounts, okay, which is account number 18,600, right? And we wrote a check, so checking is going to be our last thing that we enter in. So go ahead and enter the date, June 6th. We have insurance expense. All right, I forgot what number that was. What was it?
I think 6,400. I cannot remember it. I'm sorry. I just wrote on my note. Yeah, 6,400.
6,400. So 6,400. Okay, I have a prepaid accounts because I have 11 months of rent left. I'm sorry, 11 months of insurance left. Okay, and I know that was 18,600. And lastly, I'm writing a check out, right? I'm decreasing my assets, so therefore I'm writing a check out, which is 10. Okay, now the check is going to be for the full amount of $2,350. Now, how do I determine 1 month's worth of of insurance? I'm so sorry. How do I determine 1 month's worth of insurance?
Divide by 12 the amount.
Correct. So we're going to go 12,350 divided by 12, and we're going to get. Go ahead.
195.83.
So that means what you should get is going to be the 2,350. Subtract this to get you a total of $2,154.17 as your remaining insurance for the rest of the month, for the rest of the year. Okay. So if we go ahead and add these together, it should give you a grand total of the Okay? Right? Before moving on to anything, what do we need to do first?
Register your check, the check you issued.
Perfect. So 6.5, okay? All right, I wrote the check out for $2,350. Who did I write this check out to? Is it A-N-T? E-N-T Insurance Company. Okay. Good. Now that I have this piece of information, I can go back and finish up my journal and fill in the information here. So I wrote it to Sergeant Insurance Company, Co for short for company, right? Comma, check number 1503. Okay. All right. Good. Now we can go to our ledger and fill out that piece of information. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do is go to insurance expense. So I is all the way up here. Insurance. Oh, I missed it. Insurance expense. Okay. For the Word document, insurance is going to be on page 35 out of 39. So page 35 is where the insurance expense is going to be. All right. So insurance expense, what do we know? We know that on the 5th of June, insurance expense, you're only paying for insurance. So I'm going to write a check number 1503. Insurance, okay, right, for the month of June. Right, post reference is going to be your general journal number 1. Debit for the 195.83. Okay, therefore your debit balance should be the 195.83. Okay. Okay. So then the next account that we're going to be looking is prepaid accounts. So again, that should be on page 16. Page 16. So that should be at the very bottom of the Excel sheets. So here are my my vehicle, here are my deposits, so it's right here, prepaid accounts. Okay, I'm gonna put the date in. And here I'm gonna go ahead and write prepaid insurance 11 months. General journal number 1. And for the total amount of 2154.17. Okay. So again, this is where we can enter in our formula. We're going to go on the debit side. We're going to go up 1, which is taking the total amount from the previous one. We're going to add our debits in that same row, and we're going to subtract any credits for that row. And you're going to enter in. So now my new total is going to be 6654.17. Okay. So that is your prepaid accounts. Last thing I got to do is I wrote a check for the insurance. So I'm going to scroll up to page 1. We're all the way up in my Excel sheet. And I'm going to fill in the information here. So check number 13 at 1503. Okay. General journal number 1. And it's a credit for 2350. So that, by me pressing enter, should give me a total of $11,561.29. Okay? So that is that. Right? And the next step is to go to your subsidiary ledger, because just in case something happens to your insurance, you file against them, whatever it is, you need to make sure that you record this information into your ledger, in your subsidiary ledger, right? So we're going to go find your insurance, which is Sargent Insurance, so S. Okay, so here's L, here's O, P, Q, R, S, R, Robinson. Here you go, Sargent Insurance. Okay. Your notes here is going to be whatever you want to place here. So in this case, I'm going to write check number 1503 for 12 months. For 12 months, right? Do I have an invoice number? In this case, I do not believe so. It was just something that I just did. Okay, so I don't have a real receipt for that. However, I indicated this on my general journal number 1. Did I have terms? No. We're dealing with insurance. There's no discounts for insurance, okay? So terms, discount date and due date is going to be left blank. Prepaid accounts. Now in this case, before I even went to the insurance location, I didn't pay them in advance. So that's what this section is for. In this case, I did not incur anything. However, my total invoice amount was, because I paid for the insurance, was for the total of $2,350. Okay? All right, and then did we have any returns and allowances? Again, if something is wrong with your policy and they refund you for any reason, you'll utilize that, right? Any discounts, again, if they offer it to you, then they will let you know. Did you pay for it for the full amount? Yes, you did. All right, so therefore, you're going to create your formula again, which is to take your total invoice amount, subtract any prepaid accounts, subtract any returns and allowances, subtract any discounts, and lastly, to subtract any payments. So in this case, you owe Sargent Insurance $0. Okay. So again, this is for in case you file a lawsuit against them or whatever, their policy is just not working out for you. Okay. So it's good to make sure that you keep track of all the vendors that exist in your company. Okay. And now we're back. Okay, so what happened next?
Something six, you apply for business credit card.
Okay, so you applied for a business credit card. Do you need to record this, yes or no?
Not yet.
Not yet, because one, you only applied. Second, you don't know how much. And third, you didn't spend it yet. So, right? So we can skip this transaction right here. Now, the next scenario says that the main bank approves your line of credit for $9,000, okay? And with this line of credit, it's to be applied as an overdraft protection and personal loans, okay? So that means this money is only used in case you overdraft your bank. And it's only used and only applies if you go over your bank in accordance for $1,000. And terms and interest rates are it's going to be 22%, and it's going to be applied on the unpaid balance in your account. Okay, so with this piece of information, right? Is it necessary to journalize?
I think, I'm not so sure. Just to journalize that you have a LOC, the line of credit, that is available for your expense or whatever that's needed there.
Okay, but what is the catch? What has to happen in order for this line of credit to be applied?
Overdraft.
We have to make a purchase
There's
by
an
order.
Exactly. So in this case, this is basically an overdraft protection plan that we applied for. Is there a transaction that actually happened?
none.
No. Did we overdraft our bank yet? We still have $16,000 in there.
Not
No.
yet.
No. And is this your money?
No.
No. So in this case, this is one of the scenarios where you're given something, but you don't need to record it because there is a catch to it. You need to have something occur in order for this to happen. And so what this is that they give you basically an allowance for $9,000 for any time that you overdraft your bank account by $1,000. So that means if you do make purchases and it goes over the $1,000, you can have a safe assumption that your account is protected. You're gonna obviously get charged, and here it tells you for any amount overdue the $1,000, you're gonna get charged the 22% interest. Okay? So this line of credit is no joke. It's not a credit card. You cannot use this line of credit whenever you want. It's only for protecting your bank account. So in this case, this does affect our company if we meet those circumstances. In this case, we have not. It's just to keep in the back of your mind. This is definitely something you want to place in your notes to your financial statements because this is very important information that you record into your financial statements so you understand why you're going to be incurring these bank charges and bank fees. It's because you've understood by applying, you've read the terms and policies that they require. And it's written right here in the document saying, if you do go over it, you're going to get charged this much, and this is how much percentage of interest I'm going to charge you. Okay, so this is more of an FYI. It does not need to be journalized. However, it's definitely pertinent information that you do need to apply in the notes to the financial statements. Okay. So then what happened next? what has happened next?
Account creates new ledger account, lost on disposal of asset. We created a new account.
Correct. Okay, so what does it say? Now that I created a new account, right? 6,700, right? It's telling me to move the $2,000 from the miscellaneous expense into the new account. Okay? So this is going to be a little tricky transaction, right? How do we zero out in an account? How do you zero out in an account?
Previous entries, there are, okay, I think, where was it, 2,000 from the miscellaneous expense?
Mm-hmm.
Is on June 4th.
Okay, so we know where the money is, but how do you zero out in an account? What did we originally do? Do we debit the account or do we credit the account?
We debited.
Okay, so that means there's a debit balance. How do you make that balance become zero?
We credit the 2,000.
Nope, keep going.
And then and then debit 2,000, credit 2,000. I'm not sure.
Okay, so where are we crediting that to? Where are we? So we're gonna credit this account, right? For the miscellaneous expense because we're taking everything out of it and we're moving it into a new account. What's that new account called? Use your chart of accounts to look up account number 6,700.
700.
We're gonna use loss on disposal of asset.
Correct. So, because it's also an expense, what's our safe assumption? How do we increase our expenses? How do we increase our expenses?
By debit,
Correct. So now we're going to credit our miscellaneous and debit our lost on disposal of asset. Okay? So that's what our journal is going to entail. Okay? So loss on disposal of asset. Okay? And here we're going to be crediting our miscellaneous suspense. Okay? And we know that this is 6,700. And we know miscellaneous suspense should be 19,990. Okay? And it's already in the description to fully take out the $2,000 and move them into the account. All right? And I'm also going to indicate here that we are moving into a new account. So moving to a new account. All right. So we actually have to take the proper procedures in properly journalizing our transactions. In this case, we're moving from one account to another account, and we call this an adjustment entry. Typically, most adjustment entries is going to be moving from one account to another. All right, and we'll learn more about this when we dive into QuickBooks, when we're looking at transferring from one account to another. And in this case, this is just showing you what you need to do and how to properly transfer it over. Okay. So with that being said, now I finished my journal. Now I need to update my not my subsidiary ledger, my journal ledger, my general ledger. Okay, so in this case, we're going to start off with our expenses. We're going to find that loss on disposal of assets. Okay, perfect. Right here. Loss on disposal of assets. Okay, so for the Word document, okay, we're going to look up loss. Here it is. You're going to find the loss on disposal of asset on page 36. Okay. So once I've gone here, I'm going to go ahead and indicate here the date, which is June 6th. The item that I'm going to place here is going to be transfer loss on sale of furniture. Okay. And the post-reference date is, post-reference is going to be journal number 1. We're still in the first journal. And our debit's going to be for the $2,000. So therefore, because I just started this new account, it's going to be debit balance for the $2,000. Okay. Then we're going to go move back to our miscellaneous expense. And this time, we are transferring the information out. So therefore, so we're on June 6th. I'm going to write here that I transfer to a new account to general journal number 1, right? And we're crediting the amount for $2,000. So if you applied your formula, which is going to be, you're going to take your previous amount from above, you're going to add any debits, and you're going to subtract any credits to get you to now 0. Okay? So now I zeroed and I completely took everything out of that account and moved it into a brand new account, which is also known as the loss on disposal of asset. Okay? Now, question for you. Do we need to update anything in our subsidiary ledger?
Yes.
Why yes?
I just took a while to answer.
Based on
Okay.
the description of the what we're doing, it didn't say post to subsidiary versus the previous ones. It says post to subsidiary.
Okay. Now the question is, what is our subsidiary ledger contain? What does it contain? What does that list contain? Our subsidiary ledger.
Our vendors.
Our your customers, your vendors, your employees. This right here is an internal transaction, right? Has nothing to do with any customers, any vendors, or employees. It's dealing with the company internally. So therefore, we do not need to post to the subsidiary ledger. All right. Good.
We use only the subsidiary when it shows. Can you repeat again, please?
So we only use our subsidiary ledger when we're dealing with a customer, a vendor, or our employee. Okay, so People. Think of it, think as the subsidiary ledger as your people. All right? And think of your general journal as your ledger, your regular ledger, as your accounts, your things. Okay? So one is for things and one is for people. All right? Good. Let me see. It's 11:30. Let me see if we have time for one more transaction.
Just finish that particular date.
We have too much on that date. You see, we still have a long ways to go through this date, and we only have 30 minutes. So let's go ahead and let's go ahead and do the next transaction, which is a purchase order. All right. So we made a purchase order to furniture store, and we're trying to buy a desk set. Okay. And the unit cost for the desk set is going to be for $562. Total cost is $562. Okay. Now, do we need to record this transaction?
Yeah, because you have a liability, you owe something right now because in the fact that you paid.
Did we pay for these items yet?
Not yet.
Did we receive a bill for these items yet? Do we know that we owe this full amount?
Yeah, because it indicated there the cost.
Okay. But what proof of documentation do you have that this is a valid transaction?
Is it the purchase order number?
The purchase
It
order
makes it
number.
valid.
It does make it valid, but what does a purchase order really do?
It's a temporary. It does not necessarily mean that you're taking it as an item. Just a confirmation of your order.
Exactly. You're just ordering the items. To for surely recognize, because this is just giving us this is our quote, right? This is what we're titling it for. We could be charged sales tax, we could be charged shipping, we could be charged handling, we could be charged installation, or even assembly. So in this case, we're just making a purchase order. We're just ordering the items. When it gets received to our store, right? It's every single cost to get the asset to the store. We haven't received the items yet. We're just merely placing an order. So in this case, do we need to journalize this? No. But what you can do for good purposes and good business practices, record it in your purchase orders. Okay, so you have a list in your so in the general journal. So you have your check register, you have your deposits, and you have your purchase orders. Okay, rule of thumb: if you're buying a bunch of things, don't you want to keep track of what you bought and make sure that you receive the items? That would be very good business practices. So, for example, if I made a whole bunch of purchase orders to a furniture store, I can tell them, hey, furniture store, you still haven't sent me this item yet. Here's my proof of purchase order. Where's my items? So that's what you could do a purchase order for. It's to make sure that you keep track of all the things that you intently are trying to buy. And when you receive it, then you can check mark it off that you received it. And properly, with that, you should get a shipping slip or a bill. Okay, so in this case, we made the purchase order on June 6th. Okay, and the vendor name is going to be the furniture store, right? We bought it from the furniture store. And the item, well, what did we buy? We bought a desk. Desk set. Okay. And what is the estimated rough amount that you owe? 562. Okay. Now, with that being said, this way, in case you have multiple items you're purchasing from the same exact store, this is also your point of reference to match your invoice with the actual item that you received, right? Because the bill is supposed to tell you that you bought this item for $562. What if a year from now I buy the same item and it's now costing me $600? That is also a point of reference that you can match your invoices to your purchase order. All right. And in this case, we did not receive the invoice, so we can leave it as is until the day that we receive the items. Okay. Let me see if we can do the next one. All right, go ahead and do the next one. On the 6th, we made another purchase order. Okay, to the furniture store. Maybe we were looking through the catalog, we saw one, we made the purchase order, and then we looked through it again and we realized, oh wait, let's make some more purchases. These are some things I might need. So in this case, you want a counter and you also want display shelves. Okay, so here's the quote that's in their catalog saying that the counter is going to cost you $1,033, and you want 5 display shelves, which costs you a total of $102 per shelf. So in this total bill, we are going to calculate a grand total of $1,543. Okay. So again, this is a purchase order, so we're only going to fill in our purchase order list until we actually receive the items. So again, June 6th. The place that we got this from is from the furniture store. Oh, I didn't write store. I'm having difficult typing today. Furniture store. Okay. Furniture store. Okay. I still spelled furniture wrong. All right, anyways. Okay. For I am too tired for this. All right, so we bought a counter. If you have room for it, in this case, I'm just gonna keep it at shelves because at least, I'm expecting these items, and the total cost it's going to be is for $1,543. Okay. $1,543 even. All right, and we haven't received our invoice yet, so that is that. So what I'm gonna do is, right now it is 11:40. I'm gonna stop right here. I'm gonna highlight this section right here, saying this is where we left off. Okay, so if you guys don't have any other questions, we will continue our journalizing process tomorrow. Okay, so I'm going to stop here. Okay. Any questions in regards to what we did or catching up or whatever it is? Then say that again.
So, I'm sorry. Can that be saved on your part and then forwarded to us or whatever? So while we work on it, we have something to refer it to make sure.
Well, no, this is what you have to do this yourself.
Yeah, I understand that, but something to refer to make sure the input I did is The same.
My question is, are you going to post what you recorded today?
The video,
Yes.
yes. The
Okay.
answers, no. But what I can do is when we finish up the full week, right? I will post the answer key onto the website. So then when we reach our first trial balance, right? I'm gonna post the journal and the ledger with everything that needs to be updated up to the first week. Okay, so I will be posting answers on a week to week basis, not on a daily basis, because that's a lot of documents that I have to upload every single day. So with that being said, you will get the answers at the end of the week, at the end of the Coffee Cafe week. Okay,
Okay, but what we did, what you recorded today is gonna be posted so we can refer back to it. Because I just
correct.
had to stop and watch because there was too much going on.
Correct. And the first portion is already up right now. It just finished uploading. So the second half, you're just gonna have to wait because we're currently still recording it right now. So that will be up, should be up by no later than 5 p.m. today. All right. So with that being said, okay, so with that, yes, I will post the Excel file answer sheets on there. If it works best for you to just continue off of it, you may do so. That's fine with me. But again, this is for your benefit, not for mine. Okay, so make sure that you guys are aware of that. Okay. But yes, practice, practice,